So if you wanted to measure something, let's see, someone think of a potential personality trait. Don't use the standard big five. Give me a word that you might use to describe someone. Fun. Okay, good. So now we have to figure out, so now we've got a problem, eh? And the problem is, well, you can use fun as a marker in a linguistic exchange. Joe is a fun person to hang around with. And then part of the meaning that you attribute to fun is a consequence of the words that you surround it with, and then of course the context in which you utter the sentence, and your determination of whether or not the person you're talking to knows who Joe is. And so you're always providing the person that you're communicating with, when you use a word like fun, with a bunch of information that sort of surrounds the word so that they can infer what you mean. But if you're going to use that word and infer that it actually refers to something that's objective outside language, then you have to go about it in a different way. And so the first thing you try to do is to figure out, okay, what do you mean by fun? Exactly. So let's have some characteristics of a person who's fun. What are they like? We can't use big five descriptors. That's okay, but that's right, by the way. But I want to stay away from that just for funny. Okay, okay. So a fun person is funny, and so a funny person is someone who makes you laugh, I presume, and who's witty. And so you could start generating associated words. Okay, what else makes a person fun? Interesting. They're interesting. Okay, so they're funny and they're interesting. What else? Friendly. Okay. Enthusiastic. Talkative. Lighthearted. All right, you guys are really getting into this now. Okay, so you're starting to surround the word with a cloud of additional words that you believe in some ways have some important similarity with that underlying word, right? They seem to belong in the same category. Okay, what are some words that indicate that someone's not fun? Boring. Okay, so they're boring.
Miserable.
Miserable. What's the difference between boring and miserable? That's a good one, yeah. Misery can be interesting. Yeah. Okay. So are other differences between boring and miserable? That's probably an open answer, by the way, just so you know. Any other differences? Come on, you guys know the difference between boring and miserable, for God's sake. Yeah.
Miserable, you usually take people down with you, whereas boring, you're just kind of passive and there.
Okay, so boring sounds like it's more neutral in some sense. Yeah. Miserable, is that a positive thing or negative thing? Negative, okay. So, and what sort of emotions might it be associated with? Sadness, depression, what else? Anxiety, hate, fear, cynicism. Okay, so now we've got the fun person sort of identified with regards to a positive pole and a negative pole, right? All right, so you could conduct a brief statistical investigation to determine whether or not your characterization of fun had any utility, was valid in some sense, reliable and valid. So the first thing we might do is write down all those words on a little questionnaire. So we probably generated about 20 of them, eh? And then we might ask everyone to rate themselves according to that questionnaire. And then we might submit the data set to factor analysis, which is a complicated form of correlation analysis, and then we could find out what words clump together. Now what we would find, if we analyzed all the words that you guys generated, is that we'd have one little clump that was associated with interesting. And we'd have another clump that was associated with negative emotion. And we'd have another clump that was associated with positive emotion. And so you guys actually defined fun as a three-dimensional construct, given what we know about personality, because we know that there's a positive emotion dimension and a negative emotion dimension, and then another dimension that's associated with creativity. And so, at least insofar as you all characterized it, fun is not a unidimensional word. It crosses a variety of different domains. Now, so if you're trying to get at how to measure fun, the first thing you have to do is define it, and that's what we were trying to do when we were collecting up all these words. I'll show you how Cattell, in 1965, characterized conscientiousness. So he says, well, this thing exists, and in its existence it manifests these characteristics. Conscientiousness is that disposition governing persevering unselfish behavior and impelling the individual to duty as conceived by his or her culture. A conscientious person is honest, knows what is right, and generally does it, even if no one is watching him or her, does not tell lies or attempt to deceive others, respects others' property. An unconscientious person is somewhat unscrupulous, not too careful about standards of right and wrong where personal desires are concerned, tells lies and is given to little deceits, and does not respect others' property. So you could imagine how you could transform that definition into a questionnaire. You could use the adjectives that are in it and just have people rate themselves by the adjectives, or you could use little phrases like, do you respect others' property? 1 to 7. Do you have a strong sense of the difference between right and wrong? If you know what's right, do you generally do it? Are you a persistent person? Are you unselfish? So you can extract out individual items from your sort of global definition of what constitutes the hypothetical trait. And there's some of the examples. Do you usually keep emotions under control? Are you a person who is scrupulously correct in manners and social obligations and likes others to be the same? Are you cautious and considerate so that you do not hurt people's feelings by unconsidered conversational remarks? I like the adjective approach in some ways, because you might notice that the last question there clumps a number of descriptors together, and it isn't absolutely certain that all those descriptors belong in the same question. And so I would say, this was constructed quite a long time ago, and I would say if you're going to construct questions, you should try to ask as close to one thing as possible, because otherwise the question gets confusing. So I would say that, the second question also has the same problem.